This war has shaken the feelings of peace and security here at home. The Toronto Police Service will do everything we can as law enforcement to help Toronto families, businesses, and all of our residents feel safe.
Police ramp up patrols as the war in the Middle East intensifies.
Tonight, the threats causing concern and the increased security as the first Canadians are evacuated out of Israel. Good evening. A Hebrew school in Toronto was placed in lockdown this afternoon after threats were made.
It's being investigated as a hate crime. Just one incident police say won't be tolerated as they increase enforcement across the GTA. CTV's Janice Golding joins us from the Tannenbaum Community Hebrew Academy of Toronto with tonight's top story. Janice.
Hi, Nathan. Yes, it was a very frightening afternoon here at Tannenbaum Chat, even though no one was actually physically injured. Still, police are on heightened alert at this time, given online threats being made in the wake of the war in the Middle East.
Less than an hour after Toronto's police chief uttered these words of warning,
there will be no tolerance for any forms of hate or intimidation.
threats were made outside a Jewish high school in North York.
They said, what is this? What's going on?
I hope that everybody takes this as a wake-up call, that this isn't a joke.
Parents left the Community Hebrew Academy of Toronto at Wilmington and Dufferin with their children today, relieved but saddened.
Got panicked messages from the kids saying that they're in the gym and someone's been stabbed outside the school. Thank God that didn't happen, but very concerning for the whole community.
The school issued a letter to parents, students, and staff saying that at 12:30, 3 individuals approached students walking between the school and Dufferin Street and made threats against the community.
We're in an anxious period of time. Our community is very concerned about security at this time. We know that hate crimes against the Jewish community can increase at times like these, so we're being vigilant.
Police were already on high alert following global online threats stemming from the Israel-Hamas war and responded quickly, eventually arresting 3 men.
We, of course, all cherish our children and want them to be safe in their learning environment, and we'll be assisting and supporting the community to ensure children can attend school and feel safe.
Delivering on a promise Toronto's police chief made earlier today to increase patrols near mosques, synagogues, religious schools and cultural centres, while recommending they all stay open.
We're all recommending a heightened degree of vigilance. If people say something, they should say something. If there's an emergency, to call 911 immediately. Now's the time to be careful, and it's a fluid situation. So if the guidance from police changes, we'll adjust our approach commensurate with that.
Police have also created 2 mobile command posts in what the UJA Federation calls the heart of the Jewish community at Bathurst and Glencairn and Bathurst and Lawrence, while the mayor put forward a motion today which passed unanimously condemning hate in all forms.
Number 2, provide a one-stop shop for any organizations that wants to work with the city or the police to report hate or to find ways to prevent hate.
Despite today's incident at the Community Hebrew Academy of Toronto,
we plan to be open tomorrow. Our duty is to educate our students. We are ready to be open.
Heeding advice from police that community institutions don't need to close.
Are you going to be sending your son to school tomorrow?
Unfortunately not. We were hoping to, but given everything that's going on, we don't feel comfortable to.
And yet, despite all the safety precautions, many people's sense of security has been shattered.
Along with Toronto Police, Durham and Peel Regional Police say they have not received any credible threats, although they are monitoring the situation closely. Reporting live, I'm Janice Golding. Now back to Nathan.
All right, thank you, Janice. There's great suffering as a result of the war. Today, the Canadian government pledged an initial $10 million for urgent needs in Israel and the Gaza Strip.
There is also help beginning to arrive for Canadians who are stranded in the region. 2 Canadian military aircraft evacuated a total of about 280 people from Israel to Athens today. From there, they can catch Air Canada flights that should start leaving tomorrow for Toronto. Global Affairs also says a 4th Canadian has been reported missing in the past day, up from 3. CTV's Adrian Gabriel now on the war that is now into its 6th day.
Israel is ramping up its airstrikes on Gaza as the military masses troops on the border, preparing for a potential ground assault. The large-scale strikes hitting locations that Israel says are housing Hamas militants. But days of fighting have destroyed entire neighborhoods in Gaza. And now hospitals that are already overrun are almost out of supplies and fuel. And humanitarian groups are desperately calling for the creation of a safe humanitarian corridor.
Unless we're able to access those communities, the people that are in need, the civilian population, there's going to be an extreme situation for them, both in terms of having the food to survive, the water to survive, and other services, even shelter over their heads.
Israel says the strikes will continue until Hamas releases the up to 150 people currently being held hostage. Today, the U.S. Secretary of State met with survivors terrorized by Hamas during Saturday's initial attack. One woman who survived a massacre at a music festival near the Gaza border called on the U.S. to help save the hostages.
If there's any way to help, first priority are our friends and family that are now in Gaza.
Facing a worsening security situation, Canada has started military evacuation flights out of Tel Aviv.
I'm just so grateful to be able to have an opportunity to get home, because I know so many people that are here that want to get out and their parents want them out, but they don't have an opportunity to.
Over the next few days, Canada hopes to run at least 3 flights per day from Tel Aviv to Athens, where passengers will then grab special charters to Canada. The goal, getting 400 to 450 Canadians and their families out each day.
It's definitely a relieving feeling, but also terrifying to know that we're not the only people getting out. You know, there's still families and everybody that's left behind.
And we are joined now by Adrian Gabriel, who is reporting tonight from Tel Aviv. Adrian, you've been moving around to get a better sense of the situation. You were at the airport earlier as Canadians did board flights today. What more can you tell us about how that played out and how people are doing?
Yeah, a lot of mixed emotions, Michelle. At the airport, obviously people were very relieved. They've been, for the last 6 days, in bomb shelters with their loved ones. Many, never been through anything like this before because they're just here visiting family or coming for a wedding. Others, had their most precious cargo with them, their young children. And the sense of relief getting their children out of Israel to safety, to Canada through Athens, was a huge moment for so many of them who we've been speaking with for days about their frustration, about a lack of communication with the Canadian government, with the embassy here. But on this other side, there was also a lot of mixed emotions because those who were here visiting family, they know that they're leaving their family behind. They're leaving nieces and nephews and young cousins behind who aren't able to make the trip to Canada, to make the trip to safety. And for so many, that was a difficult decision to make.
And no telling when they might see them again. Adrian, there are many more people who want to get out, fearing for their lives. What has the government pledged on that front?
Well, right now, we know, Michelle, that tentatively there's another 2 flights booked tomorrow, 2 more booked for Saturday. The federal government saying that they will continue flights as long as they're necessary. We know that there's, more than 1,000 people still who've requested airlifts out of Israel. But, we must also mention that there's people in the West Bank, there's people in Gaza, especially Canadians who've requested help, and they can't get out, especially in Gaza. The Canadian government sources telling us that right now there is no way to get them out and get them home to Canada unless there is a humanitarian passage created, some way to get them out. They are stuck there right now, and as we've all seen, the airstrikes are violent and destructive.
Adrian, as you move around real quick before we let you go, it's late there, I know, but what's it like there at this time amid all this unrest?
During the day, there's a little bit of sense of normalcy here in Tel Aviv, some cafes, some lunch places open. At night, the city shuts down. There's no nightlife, there's no restaurants open. And even during the day when things are calm out and you're in a beautiful city, things can go sideways really quickly. And air raid sirens hit and you're left scrambling into a shelter. Yesterday, we were in the north, which is far away from Gaza, interviewing a Canadian family that's struggling to get home. And there was some concerns there in the north about militants coming in through Lebanon and coming to the south, and that left many people scrambling for shelter. So, there's lots of unrest, there's lots of uncertainty, but people are just taking it day by day right now.
Well, thank you for the update. CTV's Adrian Gabriel live for us in Tel Aviv.
We turn to an act of violence near a high school in Scarborough.
A student stabbed and rushed to hospital today. CTV's John Musselman joins us live from David and Mary Thompson Collegiate with the details. John.
Well, Michelle, you'll remember in February 2022, a student was shot inside this school. A 14-year-old was later charged. Today, a stabbing behind the school in a park nearby. The student was rushed to Scarborough General Hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Police say the stabbing happened in this park area behind David and Mary Thompson Collegiate. That's near Lawrence and Midland Avenue. A male student was attacked and stabbed. He was able to run into the school to get help. At least half a dozen police vehicles arrived at the school when the call came in around 1:30 this afternoon. Police say 2 suspects are in custody. Students at the high school remained in class until normal dismissal time just after 3 this afternoon. The incident happened off school property in what is called Donwood Park. Yellow police tape was placed around a small section of the park behind the school. The motive for the stabbing remains under investigation. There were no other injuries reported. And so far, police have released very little information on the suspects here. We don't know yet for sure whether they were students. Again, the condition of the victim taken to hospital, serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Reporting live outside the school, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, John. Still to come, some Ontario students still not making the grade. Province-wide test results are in, the slight improvements and the cause for concern, and why some say the exams need a rewrite.
But first, let's take a live look outside. The sun's still shining over Toronto. A beautiful autumn day. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Lindsay.
And it's going to be a beautiful evening, Nathan, but it is worth mentioning that some communities are under a frost advisory for tonight. Temperatures right now don't really reflect that. It is 13 degrees here locally in Toronto. The winds did change direction. They're coming out of the north right now. A little breezy as well, but as those winds ease and the sky clears, the temperature cools. We see that frost potential. Not so much for us in Toronto. We're forecasting a low of 5 degrees. It's communities from Caledon over toward the Uxbridge area that have a better chance of seeing some frost. All is clear on our satellite and radar right now, but this is what I'm going to talk about in the forecast. A Colorado low. How is it going to impact our weekend? Those details are coming up. For now, Michelle, over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Standardized test results from across the province are in, and schools didn't exactly get an A.
That has someone who was once in charge of these assessments calling for major changes in how they're done. CTV John Woodward's been poring over the scores and joins us live. John.
Nathan, last year was the first year students weren't sent home because of the pandemic, and that had academics hoping you would see a bounce up in some of these ratings. Instead, we saw stubbornly low test scores, especially in math. Jacqueline Perez says her son Maddox is a math fanatic.
He loves math. Yeah. Anything related to it. Order of operations, exponents, powers.
Maddox is in grade 8 at Ellesmere Staten Public School in Scarborough. He says there's just something about math.
And it's simple if you word it or teach it the right way.
Easier for him, not so much for many other students in the province, according to test results from Ontario's EQAO. Overall achievement in grade 9 trended up from around 52% of students meeting standards to almost 54%. Same with literacy, from 82 to almost 85%. In younger grades, results were mixed. Reading skills in grade 3 dropped slightly to 72.6% of students meeting standards. In grade 6, that dropped to just under 84%. Writing skills improved in grade 3 and dropped slightly in grade 6. Math skills trended up from 59% to almost 60% in grade 3 and from 47 to 49.5% in grade 6. But the bottom line, half of kids in grade 6 aren't up to the province's math standards, and not much improvement after the pandemic.
It was post-pandemic, so we would hope to see, students rebounding from the pandemic. But in many cases, we didn't see that.
Stephen Reed used to be EQAO's chief assessment officer. He's worried the data shows widening gaps for special needs children and for access to technology in the classroom.
We've seen these same results year in and year out. So what is the real plan?
Education Minister Stephen Lecce more optimistic.
This is a good trajectory, but folks, we got to keep going.
We got to keep the kids in school. We've got to provide stability for parents.
The tests so controversial, some say they shouldn't even be done. It's time to end EQAO for all grades and redirect its budget to investing in frontline education programs and supports, says the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario. EQAO testing does not accurately measure student success, and teachers' classroom assessments should take higher priority.
I think more attention needs to be paid on to that.
Maddox is more optimistic. The math fanatic believes every problem has a solution. Reed says he thinks the same data on how well students are doing could come from sampling tests across the province, avoiding the stress of tests themselves and freeing up public resources for teaching. Reporting live from Scarborough, I'm John Woodward. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, John. The Ford government says it will introduce new legislation on the Greenbelt next week after its about face on the file. The Housing Ministry tells CTV News Toronto a bill will be tabled at Queen's Park on Monday. It's expected to return 15 sites to the Greenbelt and make it impossible to remove lands using regulatory changes. Premier Doug Ford apologized last month and called off plans to allow development in the protected area. The RCMP is investigating allegations related to that reverse decision. Our online team has more details on this story at ctvnewstoronto.ca. Also ahead tonight, a surprise vote at Toronto City Hall limiting the number of licenses for ride-sharing vehicles. Why some say using Uber and Lyft could soon cost you more.
We're learning more about a crash this morning in Scarborough that claimed the life of an elderly pedestrian. Police say just before 6:40 a.m., they were called to a collision at Steeles Avenue East and Putnam Gate. Detectives believe a Honda was traveling west and hit an 86-year-old woman in a crosswalk. She did not survive. The driver remained on scene. Investigators are now asking residents, businesses, or anyone with possible footage of the area or incident to get in touch.
And York police are investigating after a pedestrian was hit by a cement truck this afternoon. It happened near Langstaff Road, east of the 400, just before 5 p.m. The 36-year-old woman was rushed to hospital with serious injuries.
And motorists on the eastbound 401 Express had to find alternative routes this morning thanks to this truck fire near Allen Road. A viewer captured footage of the flames and the smoke. Police say the truck ignited after its driver collided with another vehicle in the center lane. This happened around 6 a.m. No injuries were reported, and the roadway reopened just after noon.
The man accused of murdering 4 members of a London Muslim family in an attack 2 years ago took the witness stand today in his own defense.
CTV's Nick Paparella has more on what Nathaniel Veltman told the jury in the Windsor courtroom.
Nathaniel Veltman testified that he grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household and was homeschooled along with his 5 siblings in Strathroy. But over time, he came to resent his lifestyle and despise his strict mother, saying, "I was dealing with this seething hatred and rage that was eating me up inside. I started loathing her and hating her." He said the older he got, punishments became more and more frequent. "I found it traumatizing." He continued, "She would keep telling me I was a horrible disappointment." Veltman, who has a twin sister, said his parents would eventually separate when he was 15 years old. He said he started to have mental health issues. "I told her I need to see a doctor or psychiatrist, but she refused. She lashed out, told me to grab the Bible." Veltman told the jury, "I thought there was something horribly wrong with me. At one point, I thought of suicide." The 22-year-old Veltman has pled not guilty to 4 counts of terrorism-motivated first-degree murder and 1 count of terrorism-motivated attempted murder. The Offsall family was run over by a pickup truck as they walked along Hyde Park Road in West London on June 6 of 2021. 4 died, with the lone survivor being a 9-year-old boy. While testifying on the stand, Veltman's demeanor seemed calm and straightforward. Because his voice would taper off, Justice Renee Pomerantz asked him several times to speak up. His testimony resumes on Friday. Nick Paparella, CTV News.
Also today, a man who pleaded guilty in a deadly stabbing at a Toronto massage parlor apologized in court. The man can't be identified because he was 17 years old at the time of the attack. It happened in February 2020. A judge ruled that his actions were terrorism because of links to the misogynistic incel subculture. Today, the man apologized to the loved ones of 24-year-old Ashley Noel Arzaga, who died, and a woman who was seriously injured in the attack. Sentencing in the case is underway.
Halton Regional Police have arrested an Oakville firefighter accused of assaulting 2 EMS workers. The alleged incident unfolded as emergency workers responded to a call on Sunday to an Oakville hotel room. At some point, police say an altercation took place between a member of the Oakville Fire Department and 2 Halton EMS staff. 52-year-old Brett Ayers of Oakville now faces 2 charges of assault.
Could hailing a ride-share vehicle soon cost more in Toronto?
That's the concern after councillors voted to hit the brakes on the number of Uber and Lyft licenses being approved in the city. Natalie Johnson joins us live with the story. Natalie.
Hi, Michelle. This was a surprise vote by City Council, with the majority arguing that freezing the number of ride-sharing licenses would help manage congestion and pollution in the city. Critics, though, say it's unfair to the industry and could drive up prices for riders.
With some 52,000 ride-sharing licenses in Toronto,
there are too many Uber drivers here.
Too many. City Council has ordered a cap in a surprise vote that gave no notice to the industry.
We're looking at ways of reducing emissions and congestion in the middle of the city.
The 16-7 vote came out of talks about transitioning the industry to zero-emissions vehicles by 2030 and was supported by Mayor Olivia Chow.
I hear from a lot of the drivers that life is really tough, that they can't make a living. Even whether they work 14 hours, it's really tough because there's so many drivers out there.
But some councillors decried what they called policy on the fly.
Came out of nowhere, and I just think this is not the best of City Hall when we make policy decisions like that on the floor. There's going to be a lot of unintended consequences. Ride sharing is going to get more expensive.
Uber responded swiftly. Mayor Chow's cap will ultimately hurt the diverse group of Torontonians who rely on rideshare as part of their transportation mix, and those who drive rideshare for additional income, especially in a time of rising costs. This will increase wait times and the cost of a safe and reliable transportation option. With Lyft saying, while Lyft supports electrifying our industry, instituting a licensing cap without any research into its implications is counterproductive and will do little to improve congestion downtown.
If we gave notice, they would just load us up. I mean, they would add, who knows, tens of thousands more licenses, which would make it even more difficult for the existing drivers to make a living.
The moratorium will be in place until a staff report comes back at the end of next year.
We want to fight congestion. We want to get people back on transit. I think that this cap was arbitrary. It was rushed.
This is what we're elected to do. Anyone on council who doesn't already have a thorough knowledge of taxis and ride sharing hasn't been paying attention for the last few years.
The cap on licenses exempts zero-emission vehicles and is effective immediately.
And councillors acknowledge that this could turn into a court battle. Uber has said it is reviewing its legal options. Reporting live, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, over to you.
All right, thank you, Natalie. Canada's health ministers wrapped up meetings in Charlottetown today with a pledge to tackle staffing shortages.
We have so much to be proud of in our healthcare system, so many remarkable things happening, so many incredible ways that it is there for Canadians. But it's also really stretched. And this is a time, particularly in workforce, where we're facing crisis and where we have to rise to that occasion.
The federal health minister says the plan is to make it easier for nurses and doctors to practice in other provinces and to streamline credentials for internationally trained health workers. There will also be a new nursing retention program.
The Saskatchewan government tabled legislation today in the ongoing battle over what is best for trans students.
Been moved by the Minister of Education that Bill number 137 be now introduced and read a first time. Is it the pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion?
A judge granted an injunction last month, but the government also invoked the notwithstanding clause today. It prevents children under 16 from changing their name or pronoun in school without parental consent. Critics say the bill tramples on the rights of children, but provincial officials insist parents should always be involved in such important decisions.
And a new Leger poll suggests almost half of Canadians support that thinking. 46% of respondents agree that parents should be involved. 31% said they're opposed, and 22% said they're not sure.
We're also getting a snapshot of what Canadians think about another important story, the presence in the House of Commons recently of a man who fought for the Nazis. A Nanos poll shows nearly half of respondents believe the incident had a major impact on Canada's international reputation. 39% said it had a minor impact, while 9% said it had no impact.
The IOC is punishing Moscow. The Russian Olympic Committee has been banned. The suspension follows Russia's recognition of regional Olympic councils in 4 territories annexed from Ukraine. The International Olympic Committee says that is a breach of the Olympic Charter. The ROC will not be eligible for any funding, but Russian athletes competing as neutrals won't be affected by the ban.
A sitting U.S. senator is now accused of working for another country. Bob Menendez and his wife have been charged with conspiring to have him act as an agent of Egypt. Prosecutors say the New Jersey Democrat violated a law that requires people to register with the U.S. government if they are acting as an agent of a foreign government. Regardless, as a senator, he's not allowed to do that. Menendez has also been accused of accepting bribes of cash, gold bars, and a car from 3 businessmen.
Meanwhile, a high-profile member of the U.S. Senate is getting involved in politics on this side of the border. Bernie Sanders will address the federal NDP party in a pre-recorded video. The New Democrats plan to play it at their policy convention tomorrow. The Democrat from Vermont says he's a longtime fan of the party and believes it can address challenges such as the growing threat to the foundation of democracy and a rule of law around the world.
Still ahead on CTV News, there's mystery afoot in a Whitby retirement home. The fictional kind. And the man behind the murder is a resident who at 94 just penned another book.
I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, many people have been traveling north to check out the fall colors. But if you're thinking of renting a cottage, be careful. A St. Catharines family found one online but ended up being scammed out of almost $3,500. I'll have my report just ahead.
So part of the reason that we're looking at the risk of frost tonight north of the city is that temperatures could be close to freezing either overnight or early tomorrow morning. Look at that, only 2 degrees in Waterloo and Peterborough. There are things you can do to protect your plants at this time of year. Move them indoors if you can, but if you can't, time to bring out the blankets. We are looking at a little bit of a cool down over the weekend, some gusty winds as well, but not everyone is going to get heavy rain. We will discuss coming up, and stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
Summer is the most popular time to rent a cottage in Ontario, but some cottages are open year-round for rentals in the fall and winter.
But if you're thinking of renting one to take in the autumn leaves in northern Ontario, be careful you don't get scammed. Pat Foran has this story on Consumer Alert.
There has been an increase in demand for cottage rentals, and unfortunately, criminals are taking out fake ads trying to get your money. The St. Catharines family wanted to go north for a vacation and got scammed out of almost $3,500. Cottage country is a great place to visit in the fall, and the changing leaves can make it a wonderful vacation spot. Ken Coral and his family found a cottage for rent in the Georgian Bay area using Facebook.
Facebook Marketplace, the guy had a contract, he had a profile on Facebook, so it all, as far as we knew, it was kind of legit.
They were sent photos of the cottage and agreed to a price and sent an e-transfer. But when they arrived, they got a surprise.
We ended up packing up all the cars, and we had a little boat and a granddaughter and everybody 3 vehicles, and went up to the place, and we got there, and it wasn't for rent.
They called the person back who placed the ad. That's when they realized they'd been scammed out of almost $3,500.
We went and knocked on the neighbor's door, and he had said somebody a week before had been scammed just like us.
Coral reached out to Facebook about the scam, but said no one got back to him. CTV News contacted Meta, Facebook's parent company, but our emails were also not returned. Social media experts caution sending money to anyone through Facebook Marketplace without meeting them first.
Is there a way that you can meet them prior to getting out to the property, or maybe even visit the property if it's not too far away?
Following similar complaints, the OPP issued a cottage scam warning saying don't send money by direct deposit or e-transfer, view the property in person with the owner present, or deal with a reputable business specializing in cottage rentals. Search online to find reviews from past customers and meet in a public place to exchange funds. Coral says Facebook should crack down on fraudulent ads to prevent others from being scammed.
We save all year for a cottage, and it's just very frustrating because we've talked to the police, the OPP, but Facebook is not giving us the time of day.
The demand for cottage rentals in Ontario is very high. You typically need to book months in advance. According to some cottage rental websites, the ideal time to look for a cottage for next summer is between December and February. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, you don't have to drive all the way up north to take in the leaves. They're actually just beautiful in the city right now. And with that sunshine today, gorgeous.
Yeah, the fall colors are great. It really is picturesque right now.
Right now in Midtown, in North York, along the DVP, you really don't have to journey far outside of Toronto to see those colors. We're not quite at peak here locally, but we're getting close. And we have another pretty good looking weather day tomorrow if you want to head outside and take them in. The weekend will still be decent, just maybe not quite as picturesque, but also not as unsettled as it was looking yesterday and the day before that. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Before we talk about your local forecast, I do want to show you this. This is Super Typhoon Bolaven. This is a massive storm that's swirling in the Pacific near the coast of Japan, but interestingly, it's not headed that way. It looks as though it's tracking toward North America. And it is, but it's not going to be a typhoon by the time it reaches us. In fact, it will have lost all of those characteristics, but it is going to influence the energy that impacts our weather here in North America, not this week, but more so into next weekend. Tonight, though, looking at a little more in the short-range forecast, we have a frost advisory for Caledon over toward Newmarket and into the Uxbridge area around the south end of Lake Simcoe, too. This is where temperatures overnight tonight could be close to freezing. Not so much right now. It's 8 degrees in Muskoka. It is 13 in the city of Toronto. Waking up for us here locally, we should be around 5 degrees to start off the day. And then gradually we will climb to, once again, a forecast daytime high of 15 degrees. That is seasonal, or perhaps on the warm side of seasonal. And we are once again anticipating a mix of sun and cloud. At times there could be a little more cloud than sun. As this low approaches, yes, some parts of southern Ontario are still going to get wet weather, but this is mainly the southwest and perhaps the west end of the GTA. But that's about it for the heavy rainfall. Let's let our forecast radar play here. That's about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. You can see that cloud sticking around into the evening. There's the shower activity as we head into Saturday morning. If you're in Toronto areas north or east, you should stay dry during the day. It is going to be slightly cooler. The winds are going to pick up, so there is that part of the story. There is your weekend forecast, and we're looking at brighter skies as we make our way through the middle part of next week. That's your forecast for now. Nathan, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Lindsay. Perform better in the playoffs. The end-of-season message from the Blue Jays president and why he supported the controversial decision to pull Jose Barrios from that wild card game. That's coming up.
After a disappointing end of the season for the Jays, the team's president and CEOs faced reporters today.
The appearance follows that head-scratching exit from the wild card series that left fans confused and angry. CTV's Sean Leathong reports.
This is John Schneider coming to the mound. This is not a John Schneider only decision. This is
in the aftermath of the Blue Jays season, this moment stands out in the eyes of fans. Pitcher Jose Barrios taken out of the most important game of the season despite pitching very well while the score was 0-0. The Jays would soon give up 2 runs, lose the game, ending their season. At his end-of-year press conference today, Jays president and CEO Mark Shapiro was asked if it was a mistake.
I actually don't. I mean, I think that it didn't work as perfectly as it could have.
Facing accusations from fans that the plan came from the front office and not the team manager, Shapiro said he was aware of the game plan, but the decision
was designed by and led by John Schneider.
This past Saturday, General Manager Ross Atkins said he was not aware of the game plan.
I was surprised he was coming out, but I understood the strategy, understood that it would be uncomfortable. I thought it was a very courageous decision.
There have been reports that some Jays players were openly frustrated with the move, and today Kevin Gossman saying on X, "It's ridiculous us players have to watch what we say in our clubhouse."
Oh, yeah.
Shapiro saying they need to communicate the plan better.
It's not why we lost. We lost because we didn't hit, because we made a base running mistake. Those are the reasons we lost.
He says that manager John Schneider will return next year, as will GM Ross Atkins. He says the team is also focusing on getting more out of the players they have now rather than rebuilding. Despite winning 89 games this season and making the playoffs for the second year in a row, Shapiro acknowledged the season was frustrating, with several circumstances that could not be talked about publicly. He says that in those circumstances, transparency is not always an option.
That's the reality. We sometimes cannot be specific about circumstances and are going to not be able to give you a satisfactory answer.
Regardless of whether fans believe the explanation given by management, the message was clear. Next year, the same core will be in place, the same leadership group will be in place, while fans will hope for a better result. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
It was touch and go there for a while, but the Toronto Maple Leafs have kicked off the season on a winning note.
Nylander intercepts, across, Allen down, scores! It's a hat trick on opening night!
Austin Matthews scored 2 late goals to complete the hat trick in last night's 6-5 victory over Montreal. This one had to go to a shootout with Mitch Marner potting the lone goal. Matthews said it was a good start, but there is room for improvement.
It's always nice to obviously get off to a start like this. It's always nice to win the game too. So, like I said, there's a lot of things we can clean up, but obviously a lot of positives. Just fighting our way, keeping our heads down, and just working and finding a way to win the game.
The Leafs are back in action Saturday night, hosting Minnesota at Scotiabank Arena.
TV and film star Phyllis Coates has died.
Well, I was just leaving the office and... Oh.
Take it easy.
She was best known for her one-season role as Lois Lane in the 1950s series Adventures of Superman. She was the first performer to take on the character on television after also playing Lane in a movie. Coates' daughter confirmed her mother's death in The Hollywood Reporter. She was 96.
Fans eager to see Taylor Swift's Eras Tour concert film got a special surprise.
Welcome to the acoustic setting.
The concert film debuted today, one day earlier than planned. Swift attended the Eras Tour movie premiere last night in Los Angeles, walking the red carpet and meeting fans. While it's too early to talk about box office figures, pre-sales broke records in both the U.S. and Canada.
And one guest at last night's premiere was none other than Beyoncé herself. Taylor Swift shared a video of them together in the cinema, adding, "I'm so glad. I'll never know what my life would have been like without Beyoncé's influence, the way she's taught me and every artist out there to break rules and defy industry norms." Beyoncé's attendance comes just as her Renaissance Tour concert film heads to theaters in December.
Fans hungry to see more of that upcoming prequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory got another taste today.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you all. My name is Willy Wonka.
Timothée Chalamet stars as a young Willy Wonka as he tries to make a name for himself in the chocolate industry. Along the way, he meets Oompa Loompa, played by Hugh Grant, and faces strong opposition from competitors. Wonka is out December 15th.
Stars Tonight is brought to you by Lastman's Bad Boy. Who's better? Nobody.
It finally happened. There is a $1.7 billion winning Powerball ticket, where exactly it was purchased, and the frenzied wait to find out who's going to cash in. That's after the break.
There will be no tolerance for any forms of hate or intimidation.
Updating our top stories, Toronto police are investigating threats made at a Toronto Hebrew school as a hate crime. 3 suspects were arrested. The incident comes less than an hour after Toronto police said they are ramping up patrols in Jewish communities, mosques, and other places of worship in response to what they describe as global online threats.
It was a scary scene for students and parents after violence broke out near a Scarborough high school. Police say a male student was stabbed at a park near David and Mary Thompson Collegiate Institute. He was sent to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. 2 people are in custody.
We've seen these same results year in and year out. So what is the real plan?
Standardized test results are in, and they show many elementary and high school students from across the province are missing the mark when it comes to math. Calls to scrap the EQAO are growing, with education workers suggesting to instead invest in support and programs for students.
Remember to keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
Real estate firm Royal LePage is lowering its expectation for home prices through to the end of the year. BNN Bloomberg's Jacqueline Hansen has more.
Some of the highest mortgage rates in years are expected to continue to weigh on home sales and, in turn, on prices. Royal LePage has cut its forecast for home prices for the final few months of this year. After 3 months of weaker than anticipated prices in some major markets recently, the real estate firm expects little change for the rest of 2023, though that still means higher prices than this time last year, when prices had been much weaker. It expects prices will be up 7% in the fourth quarter compared to the same period last year. That is down from its previous forecast of 8.5%. Well, let's take a look at some of the closing market numbers for today. The Canadian dollar is trading lower 0.5 cent to about 73 cents US. West Texas Intermediate oil declined just slightly to a little under $82 US a barrel. And Western Canadian Select declined $1.30 to roughly $61 US a barrel. As for stock markets, the TSX fell 163 points to end the day at 19,500.24. That is the latest in business. I'm Jacqueline Hansen of BNN Bloomberg.
As electric vehicles become a more common sight on the road, a new survey suggests Canadians are still hesitant to buy one for themselves. Ipsos surveyed 2,000 people. 71% of those who already have a gas-powered vehicle say they're reluctant to give them up. At the same time, 59% of respondents said they'll consider buying an EV for their next purchase. The top concerns hindering that move were access to charging and how far EVs can travel. Nearly 2/3 said they'd like to go electric to reduce their carbon footprint.
Someone in California is holding a lottery ticket worth more than $1.7 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B.
Get your tickets out. We'll start things off tonight with the number 24.
Last night's jackpot was the second largest in the history of the Powerball lottery, and it wasn't easy. There were 35 previous draws without a winner. The ticket was sold at a market in Fraser Park, California.
A whodunit that puts the minds of readers to the test, and the 94-year-old author behind the murder mystery. The performance for the ages coming up.
And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight, and a special hello to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
It's no mystery keeping the mind active is important as we age.
That's certainly the case for a 94-year-old in Whitby. He is a published author who celebrated the release of his latest book at a very special launch party today. CTV's Allison Hurst reports. Well, this story about a murder mystery sure is keeping us in suspense. Obviously, some technical difficulties there, but we have Lindsay on deck to talk about the weather as we head toward the weekend.
Yes, and you know what? The weather's looking not bad in the short-range forecast, and even the weekend forecast not looking as bad as it was a day or two ago, which I think is great news because this is a very popular time for people to go to a pumpkin patch, a family farm, do all those kinds of things. It's looking not bad in the end now. Let's begin, though, talking about what's in store for tonight. Clear skies expected around the GTA. Here's a look at the satellite and radar. We might see a bit of an increase in cloud through those overnight hours, but it's the fact that we have clear skies, calmer winds, and cool temperatures that we also have the risk of frost. And you can see the communities etched in yellow here. Those are under the frost advisory. If you're heading to Port Dover tomorrow, here's a look at what you can expect for Friday the 13th. Nathan and Michelle, I'll send it back over to you.
All right, let's go to CTV's Allison Hurst's story. We got our technical issues sorted out. Here it is.
In this room, in the midst of a wine and cheese, a murder takes place. No, not a real one, rather a theatrical performance, putting residents to the test to determine who done it. Inspired by retirement home Amica Whitby's resident and author, Douglas Hall.
I thought it was well done. I thought initially, I thought it was the chef.
Hall has just released his 4th book in a mystery series after having written more than 24 books in his life.
I'm 94. And, somebody says, why do you still write? Well, it keeps me out of the malls.
His wife is and always has been his editor.
She's still editing. It's just slower. It's like, well, anybody that has somebody with Alzheimer's knows what I'm talking about. Her attention span is slower, and she'll only do maybe 1 page or a page and a half a day, which is fine. I've got all the time in the world.
This latest book, Murder in Season, was released September 15th and inspired the home staff to put on a murder mystery performance for residents.
He's written so many novels, and he's been so kind to share them with our residents and us as team members. So it's been really great to sort of take that inspiration and to spin it into something all residents can enjoy.
All right, thanks for watching. Be sure to join Sandy Ronaldo tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zerada Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morris and all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.